Welcome to the show, everybody. You are getting a sneak peek. I started recording in the middle of a huge blow-up, knockdown fight. So I'm the good guy in this story. I'm the hero. Vloss is the villain. Nelson, would you agree with that so far?
I would agree so far, for sure.
So every episode, we just kind of wing it and talk about dogs. And Vloss every time is like, you guys need to make a script. You have to make a script. And I made a framework for today's episode, put all this time into it. And I don't like to use the word jerk when it's not called for, but he's being a huge jerk about it. So
I don't know if you can claim to have put all this time into it, but there's no denying that you made a framework for today's lesson.
It's I see bullets.
It's a weird framework.
No, it's super good, and it's like, look how many bullets there are. That's a lot of content.
So many of these situations are going to be like the exact same thing to talk about.
Okay, so the way you would introduce a friendly older dog to another friendly older dog is way different than an aggressive older dog to a standoffish older dog. This is amazing framework.
But the way you introduce a friendly older dog to a friendly older dog is going to be similar to how you introduce a puppy to a friendly older dog.
Similar, but different. So I would like everyone weigh in, tell us in the comments. Obviously, you're all going to be on my side because I'm in the right here, so please tell me that in the comments. We're going to do this, and we're going to see if everyone likes this framework, and I think they will.
I just feel like there's so many other things to talk about yet.
Like what?
Like, for me, so, I ended up writing down some stuff, too, because I can't just go into this with nothing.
Now
right?
we know where it came from. He wrote his own, and he's salty that I have one. Okay, now it's clear.
No, I wouldn't say salty. It's just, I don't get yours. It doesn't make any sense.
It's just properly seasoned. He's not salty. It's just properly seasoned.
We can use either. So today we're going to walk through how to do dog intros. We should have said that already, but that's the title. So I'm assuming everyone read the title before they clicked into this episode. Pull up your framework, Vloss, do a screen share. Let's use it.
Ooh. Oh, I don't have it on digital. I went old school. It's analog.
Wrote it down on paper?
It's on paper. It's right here.
That's what liars say who don't have frameworks.
It's literally...
I didn't write it down. It's just in my head.
It's literally right here. So I wanted to start off... I wanted to start off with...
there is one.
I wanted to start off talking about the fact that what do most clients do to introduce two dogs, right? Like, at least I think, pretty much everybody always does the same thing, and it's pretty much the exact opposite of what I think we're going to go over today. So I want to start there. What do most people do when they introduce dogs?
Yeah, I think that's good.
Open the door and let them loose.
And then don't do that. And so we're going to talk through how to do dog intros. We're going to do it Vloss's way so he doesn't get super angry the whole time. And then we'll figure out, we're going to walk you through a lot of different options, good ways, bad ways, and then we'll give you options for how to do it with different types of dogs. Whether we use my framework or we just wing it, it's hard to say. But there's obviously the way you introduce two puppies to each other is a lot different than the way you would introduce two adult Rottweilers with dog aggression issues to each other. So, definitely. Rott owners, I'm not picking on you, so don't get angry. Any aggressive older dog.
It's usually the pit people you have to fight off.
That's true, for sure. Someone gave me a middle finger emoji on YouTube the other day. I didn't even know there was a middle finger emoji.
I mean, I knew there was one, but I can't imagine why they would have given you a middle finger.
Because we talked about the pit bull breed.
Hmm.
But apparently you can't do that. Yep. Doesn't matter if you say that. You can say, I like pits. They're really good dogs. They just need trained and socialized. And if you don't train them and socialize them, some of them become aggressive. And still people are like, that's bashing the breed.
I think you deserved it.
Maybe, but probably for something else. Okay, so what are we going to start with? We're going to talk about bad ways to do dog intros? Yeah, okay.
I think you should.
Who wants to? Nelson, somebody? Tell us a bad way.
So the worst way that you can introduce two dogs is have the first dog loose in your house or in your yard. It could go either way. And then set the second dog free and walk away. And just don't even be there. The absolute worst way that you could introduce two dogs to each other is just to literally let them figure it out.
I disagree.
I don't know if
Really?
it's the worst way, but I'd say it's the way that 95% of clients do it. They have one dog out in the yard, and they just bring the other dog in through the door, let them go.
For sure that, but usually they at least stay there.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, they do stay there. I'll give you that part.
So I'm not sure Nelson's is the worst way, because I feel like it'd be worse if you gave them each like a chunk of raw meat at the same time. If you just tossed them each like a raw steak and then walked away. That sounds worse. But we don't need to split hairs here. So we're agreed you need to have some sort of plan. And just letting them together is not a plan.
Even with good dogs, right?
Yeah.
I mean, even with good dogs, you still need some kind of general structure, like the structure you made for this video, right? It could be light and loose, but something.
Something. Well, why don't we talk through some different scenarios of how we'd introduce dogs, and we'll see how it goes. So the way you introduce dogs differs based upon the dogs and their age, their temperament, maybe their breed. I don't know. Maybe that's relevant. Maybe it's not. Nelson, how would you introduce two puppies to each other? 8 weeks old. How do you do it?
2 8-week-old dogs that I'm introducing together. I am very likely going to just put both dogs down and play ref if I have to. So again, most 8-week-old puppies are curious and want to play and are well within a socializing type of period of their life. That usually, because again, temperament absolutely does play a role, things are going to go pretty well, even if they never actually go up and sniff each other or play or anything like that. Typically, they're not going to get into any kind of scuffle. But, because nothing is perfect, I would still say you should be there and play ref whenever you have to. Because one of the things that you will definitely see is rude behavior, right? You're going to see very likely one puppy is going to grab the other by an ear and try and walk around with them and do a bunch of stuff like that. So
done. I've got nothing to add. 2 puppies, put them down, let them play. You're the ref.
You're the ref.
You look like you have something to add.
I just have a question overall. So no leashes, no leash time whatsoever. Just literally put both puppies on the floor, let them go.
For 2 8-week-old puppies, yeah, I don't know if I would do any leash work.
Okay.
Would you? Is that a challenge?
I don't know. I guess I'm interested to see where this goes with some of the other situations that are on the list before I really jump on anything.
Yeah. Well, this framework is going from we start with puppy to puppy and we end with aggressive adult dog to aggressive adult dog with a lot of stops in the middle. So we're going to be adding tools and techniques as we go.
Definitely.
Yeah. So I think I just want to hear Nelson's answer to each one, and then at some point I'll chime in and talk about my overall thoughts, just based on how we did with the first one.
I love that framework. So what we could do is have Nelson answer each one. Then you get time to think. You then add to that, and then afterwards I'll say, yeah, I would have said both of those plus this other thing. I'll have an hour to plan. This is okay. Let's move on. Puppy to friendly older dog, and we could really split hairs here and say what's a puppy, when do they quit being a puppy. For all of these, I think 8 weeks we're going to talk about for puppy, and if it's 16 weeks, it's still pretty close to the puppy. If it's 6 months, it's more like an older dog at that point, and you just have to kind of determine for yourself. But puppy to friendly older dog. And older does not mean old. The older dog could be, a year.
Yeah.
Up, yeah.
Okay, so what I would do for a fresh 8-week-old puppy being introduced to a friendly older dog, I would still have the puppy on a leash for sure. I probably wouldn't have the older dog on a leash. He could be kind of hanging around, sniffing everywhere that we've been. I would definitely calm the puppy down, at least to the point where it's not trying to jump at the older dog, trying to play. Because, again, we're assuming that this 8-week-old puppy is looking for nothing more than absolute best friends. So I would walk him around, get him to go potty, get him to settle down to the older dog, and then start letting the sniffing happen, playing ref, but pretty quickly I would start on a leash, but I would drop that leash really, really fast. Once they've made initial contact and they're sniffing each other, that leash is getting dropped pretty quick.
Gloss, what do you want to critique there? Or do you want to hear more before you critique?
No,
I would do it different for the record. Here's what I would do. I wouldn't use the leash.
I'm struggling here.
At all?
Yeah, I wouldn't use the leash. Now, I wouldn't, if someone used a leash, I wouldn't say, oh my gosh, that was wrong or bad.
Sure.
But if I'm introducing, to my dogs, a puppy, I would just set it down. And if I had worries about the puppy being, so psychotic that we couldn't control it, that would be different. But here, I'm assuming it's, your average puppy, not a, crazy puppy that's, level 10 on the excitement or drive scale. Floss, your lips are moving. What do you got?
Excited
Again, I'm struggling with these situations. How well do you know the friendly older dog?
We know it well.
So that's a decent question, though, right? Yeah. So I guess to frame this up better, are we instructing people how they should be doing it themselves, or am I explaining how I would introduce I don't know, I guess I would say my dog, but neither of my dogs, are aggressive, so it doesn't play out perfectly each time. But because that is fair. How well do I know that older dog? Could I just back it off with a snap, as opposed to that dog's going to be super excited to want to play with the puppy?
I would assume that you know all these things to be true. You know the one dog to be a puppy, and you know the other dog to be friendly.
Friendly.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I guess I just then don't find the situations as realistic per se. Like if you said you're introducing your personal dog to a puppy and your personal dog is a friendly older dog, then I think what Nelson just sort of went through makes sense. But to me, if it's a friendly older dog, and I'm not working at a daycare where I know that dog so well because it's in there every single day, right? The odds of me knowing that friendly older dog well enough to make the decision to have it off leash seem like it's just not going to happen, right? So,
well, I would say to me that happens all the time where I have a client who I've trained their older dog and they get a puppy and they want help and they're like, how should we do the intro? And if I'm there, if I trust the older dog, I would just set the puppy down.
And I guess I'm envisioning the majority of the situations that we're talking about still aren't that. That's two dogs inside the same household, and they're introducing the dog to their new dog, as opposed to what I've been picturing for all of these is I'm introducing my friend's dog to a client's dog or something like that. Like a client's dog to their friend's dog. That's
interesting.
So if you don't know the other dog is a friendly older dog, then you move to the next one on our list here, our standoffish or questionable older dog. So if you can't think of a time when you would know that an older dog was friendly, then you would just skip this one and you would go to the next. But
I think that's going to my overall point for all of these first three ones, that now that you've brought the third one up, is that I would probably do pretty much the same thing, and I would always be more cautious than both of you and just start on leash no matter what.
So would you, in the case of, let's say, puppy to nice older dog, you're saying that you would have both of them on leash and you'd be working with both dogs on leash?
I don't know how much working would be necessary, but I think I would start off, no matter what. If you ask me ideal dog introduction for any dog, I'd say I want two people, one for each dog, and each dog on a leash. And that's just where I'd start. And that way, regardless of what happens, I'm covered. I have control. I have a leash, right? If something goes poorly, I can make decisions and control the situation. Whereas if I start without the leash, I can't do that.
I think as a general guideline, that's perfect advice. I don't think that's realistic, but I think that would be perfect advice.
Why is it not realistic?
Who has two leashes? Who can just find two leashes out of nowhere?
But the other thing too is, how many clients do you know that leash their dogs up to meet
We already went over this. None of them do it, but they should. That's my point.
I mean, if I got 2 8-week-old puppies, the only reason they'd be on leash is to make sure that they don't run away.
So, and that one's really extreme, and it's why I didn't bring it up at that point, right? So, like, introducing 2 8-week-old puppies, I don't really think the leash is going to come in handy. But every situation after that, I feel like there's a decent enough chance that you might as well start there.
Well, I can think of situations where I would wish that I had the puppy on a leash, because it's so terrified of the older dog. But I don't know, man. I think the chances of me introducing a puppy to an older dog, and I'm a dog that I know to be friendly, and me wanting that dog on a leash, I don't know. I wouldn't care one way or another. If they brought a leash, cool, but I don't know if that would be like in my stipulations.
So I like what you just said there, Nelson, though. It's something we didn't have on our framework, even though it's a really good framework. It was missing this. Is the friendly dog, I was assuming it's a controllable friendly dog. Right. And many of them aren't. So to me, the friendly dog is a dog who I know and I can control, and it'll listen to me. If the dog is out of control, the older one, even if it's friendly, then a leash is going to be needed so it doesn't terrify the puppy. So, definitely. And you mentioned this in passing. You said get him back with a snap. And for everyone listening, he means a snap of his finger, not like a snap of the leash or something crazy. And if you can't like snap and walk to him and back him up, then yeah, that older dog is too wild and probably needs a leash on. So I'm going to revise my framework to friendly older dog that listens to voice commands.
That listens well. Whoa. We're not revising. We're evolving. Okay? Yes. The framework just evolved. That's all.
I expanded.
There you go.
So let's move on. Let's make it harder.
Okay.
Because all of these tools that we're going to talk about now, to Vloss's point, somebody could use them. If they want to be ridiculous and spend 3 hours introducing 2 puppies, they could do it. So
if they want to put muzzles on, right? Like, have fun.
Have to find muzzles that fit an 8-week-old Pekingese. Okay, let's go to puppy to a standoffish older dog. So standoffish, I don't know how we want to define this, but this is an older dog that we just don't trust as much. Maybe an older dog that doesn't really love puppies, but is not aggressive. This is a dog who likes other dogs, but you're just worried about, is he going to like this puppy? If the puppy gets in his face, is the older dog going to snap and bite the puppy and terrify him? This is a really common scenario where people say, I don't know if my older dog is super friendly. He hasn't seen a puppy in years, and no one has any idea. So this, to me, is a pretty common scenario.
Mm-hmm.
You want to take this one, Nelson?
I would agree that this definitely seems like the most realistic time that someone would even question, or even want my advice, right? Is because the older dog is 90% great with other dogs, but exactly what you mentioned are the things that we're looking out for. What happens when that puppy jumps on him? Is he going to snap at the puppy? Or what happens if, he's drinking water and the puppy bowls over and tries to drink the same water, or getting in the face, that kind of stuff. And so usually what I would do, this is absolutely a time that I would have both dogs on a leash. May or may not be holding the older dog, again, depending on how controllable it is. But I'm absolutely going to take my time before letting that puppy go, because I want there to be plenty of time where the older dog came over, sniffed the puppy, got used to the fact of how it moves, the fact that they're fast, they're loud, they run into stuff. A lot of this, I guess, is just more so than the puppy. It's for that older dog to get used to and I don't know. Really, what you're going for is just that it likes the puppy more than it's annoyed by the puppy, right? Because it's that annoyed factor that we're questioning at the moment of how are you going to correct this puppy for being annoying?
I agree. Voss, what do you want to throw in there? What are you angry about?
I was going to ask, you said hold the older dog. What do you mean by that? Like, just you have the leash and you're just standing there, or what do you mean?
Well, I said I'd be holding the puppy. I don't know if I'd be holding the older dog's leash to keep them separated, right? Again, depending on how controllable that older dog is, there's a very good chance that, again, I would just be backing that dog off until I feel comfortable and it feels comfortable, and maybe that puppy's a little tired, for it to start coming over, sniffing, and making first contact. But that first contact is typically where a puppy will try and jump and play, right? And that's really the big things that I'm at least envisioning. That would be what I'd be concerned about, is how is this dog going to react when this puppy inevitably jumps at its face or on its shoulder or something like that, trying to play.
So you're saying in this situation, you still don't have the older dog's leash. That dog is free.
If I feel confident with that older dog, yes, he would likely have a leash on, but I don't know if I would be holding it. I guess the hard part too is that I'm imagining I'm by myself. Like if I just had to introduce this puppy to a somewhat grumpy older dog, right? Like, I don't know if that really requires two people, because if I felt like, oh, this is definitely going to require two people, I feel like he would probably move up to not so friendly category.
Well, this seems like a good time to flag that there's a lot of ways to do an intro.
Sure.
And you're going to vary it based upon the dog, each dog, because of course there's different puppies, right? There's the puppy that's really nervous, that isn't even wanting to go up to the older dog. There's the average puppy, and then there's the crazy puppy who's like, is going to go nuts and like chase the older dog and be absolutely crazy. And then with the standoffish older dog, if you know it well, there's some that are like, if the puppy charges them, they might give a little growl and just try to get away, and others might snap to say, stay away from me. Right. So obviously there's so many variables that you could come into play. What I would encourage a client to do is just take your time with this one, and if the older dog is truly just a little standoffish and doesn't trust the puppy, then you just need a little time to build up that trust. And you could do what you were talking about there, Nelson. You could also put the puppy in a crate, and like a big wire crate in the middle of the room, sure, and let the older dog loose in the room. And the older dog can go up and smell the puppy through the crate. And every dog's different. If the older dog is not interested in that, then you might have to change course of action. But the older dog might love it and smell the puppy and wag its tail, and then the puppy gets rid of some of its craziness from inside of the crate, and then you could take it out and put it on leash. So and that really helps, of course, if you're on your own with this, which a lot of clients or people are. Mm-hmm. And then Baby Gate does the same thing pretty much.
Yeah, I think I like the crate a little bit more, just so I know that the puppy's not doing anything dumb either. But yeah, I mean that's extremely helpful, right? Again, it's a different way to achieve the same goal, which is that the puppy is calmed down a little bit to the older dog, that it's not going to jump immediately.
Mm-hmm. So take your time. Voss, you've got something. What do you got?
Well, I mean, that seems like a good way, like a good option for doing it, right? And I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, there's no other, like, my way is the only way and there's no good options, right? But to me, I just go back to, if we're talking the ideal way to get these dogs around each other, again, I just go back to, you'd start off each dog on a leash, 2 handlers, right? And that way you can control the situation, right? Each person can control a dog.
What if the puppy's not leash trained yet? Client just got him.
It doesn't matter, because at least by having the leash,
you put the leash on, the
still can control them.
Thrashing and like freaking out about the collar. Now what?
But again, you're just coming up with obscene scenarios. Then you would work on getting the puppy calmed down to having a leash on first. But
your trainer can't come for like 5 days. What then? To fix the leash issues. See, this is what you did to us on that episode of Dog. What was that on? Dog I don't even know what it was, dog fights or... Oh, no, leash reactive dogs. No, but I agree with your point, Floss. You could obviously put them both on leash, and there's so many things you could do. You could go for a walk together and just heel the dogs and go for a walk and try to get the puppy walking well, and it gets rid of a lot of excitement. It builds up some trust, and then you could slowly let them start smelling each other away from the home. And we haven't talked location yet. You know, once you get into standoffish or aggressive dog, getting away from the home is pretty key. Mm-hmm. With the earlier ones, I don't think it matters much, but once standoffish, it kind of matters. Aggressive, it matters for sure. But go for a walk, both of them on leash, 2 handlers, and then let them smell. I like it.
Agreed. Which again that's the advice I'm given to most people, right? Is to go for a long walk together. Generally 45 minutes. Now, with a puppy, you're clearly not going to take it for a 45-minute walk. Or if you did, you might have to be picking that dog up at times. But even if you are, that's still good for the other dog as well, because the puppy's still there. They're still smelling it. They're still getting to know what the dog is like. So I think I might still give that advice. I probably wouldn't, again, say 45 minutes. But to me, I just keep going back to, if we're talking the ideal situation, right? Because that's what we should be telling people to do, is the ideal situation. To me, it's not going to be one person. It's always going to be 2 people, right? And you're always going to want to have control to start.
What I would throw out is it depends on our audience. So much of the audience of this show is other dog trainers. And they're going to be in the scenario a lot where it's them, right? And they're introducing client dogs, or there's, they're doing a board and train, or who knows what. But I agree with you. 2 handlers, of course, would make this better.
So then could we change the name of the podcast to Dog Trainers Bringing Home training dogs in order to introduce to their personal dogs?
That actually,
because then we could have that conversation all day.
That rolls off the tongue. I like that.
But that completely tanks everything, right? And so if I'm bringing home a board and train, for example, there's no way there's 2 handlers and I'm doing all of this stuff by myself.
But that's my point, because I feel like that's a lot of the situations you guys have been talking about at this point.
Sure.
Is the other dogs well enough to do the introduction without control of the other dogs. To me, that's your personal dogs or dogs that you've worked with a ton, right? To me,
what I would say is something I see a lot. So it's rare, that I'm going to a first house call where someone's like, I have an older dog, and I want you to help introduce my 8-week-old puppy. That doesn't come up very often. But I get it a lot where it's a dog I know, and they're like, hey, I've trained it, and they're like, I'm getting a puppy. Can you be there the day we bring him home? And I know the other dog, and no.
But in the scenario you just talked about, you have 2 handlers. You don't have one. You're with a client.
That's true, but I wouldn't use them if we're back to the top of my framework of puppy to friendly older dog.
Closet, obviously.
Puppy to friendly older dog that I know. Just put the puppy down. We let him play. We check out body language. We talk about body language, what to look for, and then we talk about the older dog maybe claiming his bed or his toys or whatever.
Anyways, I think you guys get my point at this point. That I would just do it different and be more cautious. And we can keep going through all your lists. But
I'm a cowboy, man. I just want to get it done as quick as I can by myself.
So now we're moving on. Puppy to aggressive dog. We're halfway through. No. Yeah, this will be when we complete this, halfway through our framework of difficulty. So puppy to aggressive dog.
This one's a little tough. This one's a little tough because I don't know how aggressive the aggressive dog is, and then I don't know how timid that the puppy is. But I can guarantee you this is going to take days at the earliest, is what I would say, right? I mean, if it took a couple of weeks, that wouldn't surprise me at all.
Can I give you a scenario?
Sure.
And then you react to that.
Okay.
Because this is one I see a lot. An older dog, 4-year-old dog, reactive on leash, and hasn't met a new dog in quite a while. Every dog, it barks and lunges when it sees them. The client doesn't think it would try to kill another dog, but it doesn't seem very friendly. It's gone to daycare before and played with dogs, but there's no way, they can't introduce it to another dog. And, when they're on leash, they have to get it home quickly if it sees one. So
doesn't that change all of this? Because now you've switched to not aggressive and
Well, I don't know. I mean, a client would say, we don't know if it's aggressive, and it acts aggressively when it sees a dog. I'm trying to give you...
And the other questions, the concept was, I know this to be true. But let's go with that either way.
I know this to be true, right? This dog has never successfully mauled another dog, but it's leash reactive.
But had the opportunity to.
Maybe. Client called you. This is a new client. Dog is crazy when it sees new dogs. They have no idea what to do. They brought the puppy home before they called you, and the older dog was barking and growling. They didn't know what to do. Yeah.
Okay.
Go.
So, I guess one of the big things that I would be doing a ton, if I'm trying to get this progressed as much as possible in one single session,
I'd say don't worry about that.
Okay.
Just give her what you would do.
What I would do is I would have the puppy's crate in a very, a very common place that everybody would be hanging out, not in a room, not in a basement, not in an office. I mean, it would be like in the living room or in the kitchen, somewhere where everybody is generally at. And what I would start to do is use that time that the puppy is either in its pen or in its crate to train the older reactive dog. And I would be working on getting it to not target or not stare at the puppy every time that it moves. I would definitely correct it anytime that it's barking or growling at the puppy in its cage. Like if it just walks up and kind of growls, which is something that we've all seen before, I would definitely start to correct that. And I would be working really, really hard in getting the more reactive or aggressive dog to calm down in the presence of that puppy. And then I would certainly start to work on if I am by myself, because again this could go for days, then maybe I crate that more aggressive, more reactive dog, and I would be working or playing with the puppy. However, because I don't really have to work with the puppy, right? It just has to not go up and antagonize the older dog. But I might work on claiming space from the older dog's crate to the puppy. I might be working on just general walking, because it has to get leash trained anyways. And I would be correcting the older dog in the crate as well, if it is also growling and barking just for having that puppy walk around. If I have two people, that's fantastic, because then I could just pass the puppy off and correct and calm the older dog. But if I don't, then I would just have kind of a quick place that I could stash that dog while I deal with the older one. But I would probably be doing that for days, before I have any level of confidence that I can back that dog off, even though it's reactive. The hair starts to go out, that tail goes off, and I can tell them, hey, get the heck out of here, because I have the puppy on a leash. But even when they're actually making first contact...
Can we pause there for a second?
Yeah.
So I like that you said however long, or at least, a few days. What I would say to a client is you work on that until the older dog is no longer reactive towards the puppy.
Sure.
Right, and we don't know how long that is. Maybe that's 2 hours, maybe it's 2 days, maybe it's a week. Depends on the dogs, it depends how much work they put in and how it goes. But that would be my framework: is don't rush it and do some of the stuff you're talking about now. But you're ready to move on to, I think, what you were about to say, when the older dog is no longer reactive on the stuff that you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then you start having them out, again, in the yard together. I definitely have a leash on the puppy just to be able to kind of stop him from approaching the more reactive dog. Even after first contact, I'm going to be advocating on both ends. If I feel that the older dog is being pushy, I'm going to be advocating for the puppy. But also, if the puppy is still super excited, because just because they sniffed each other and they got used to each other in one single context doesn't mean that the puppy can now do whatever the heck it wants to do. We don't know what might take that reactive dog off or not. And like, it might be nothing. It might be, hey, I sniffed you and now that I know who you are and you've been here for a couple of days, no big deal. Come hang out, and they just got over the initial interest. Or it could be, hey, I allow you to be in my house, but again, that's my toy, or don't move too fast. Don't come down the stairs without me knowing.
So I think those are all excellent points, and people have to understand that situations can change so rapidly. We started off, Covey had said the worst way to introduce two dogs would be to throw meat in there, right? So it'd be very easy for the two dogs to sniff each other, get used to each other in one situation, but then something drastic change, and you might not even know what that drastic thing is. It might not be somebody introducing meat, but it could be that the puppy goes by the dog's favorite ball or something like that, and that changes the situation considerably. So even after they've done the calm down and you're feeling better, situations changing could have a huge impact. One thing I did want to do, though, Nelson, is I wanted to circle back. You said it might be a multi-day process, which I agree with. It might take multiple sessions. In between, do you do anything additional to try and help that older dog? So some people talk about with like introducing a baby or a new puppy to leave a scent item with the other dog, right? Would you leave a blanket that the puppy had with the older dog at night so that the older dog starts smelling the puppy? Is that something you think would be helpful?
I don't personally put a lot of stock in that, but I also think that there's no negative, so I would have no problem. For example, if the family wanted me to do something like that, I'd have zero problem, taking and switching out a blanket so that the older dog could hang out with a fresh blanket, let's say, of fresh puppy smell. I don't think that there's anything wrong with it. It could only help. I just don't know how much it actually helps. So would I personally do it? Like if I were introducing, these dogs, both of these dogs for mine, yeah, probably not, but I have zero against it whatsoever.
Covey?
Yeah, wanted to expand on a few things. So just so the listeners know, there's two main reasons these dogs would fight. One would be trust, and the other would be resources. So trust, like the first day, you let the puppy run up to the older dog's aggressive, doesn't trust him or like him, or maybe he's just excited, who knows. But that would be one reason. And then Nelson and Voss, you both touched on this. Then after you get past that, resources would be the big one. And you just have to understand that. And I would keep resources up until the dogs really know each other well. And resources would be dog bed, food, bones, toys, could be on your lap. If your older dog especially, is like on your lap on the couch and the puppy runs over, it could be a spot that it guards. So just all things to think about. What I wanted to expand on is, as trainers, we often play the cards we're dealt, and there are so many ways. Without getting into huge details, let's just talk about some other ways you could do these intros. And I say play the cards you're dealt because let's say that the client has a really nice fenced-in area in their yard, and you could let the puppy be in there and walk the other dog on the leash outside of it and let them smell each other through the chain link. That'd work great. But maybe they don't have a chain link fence. So you look around, you're like, well, I can't do that with this client. But maybe you live in a really quiet neighborhood. And you're like, let's go for a walk. And you hold the puppy and just carry it. Well, you walk the reactive dog with two handlers. And you walk until the dog's no longer reactive about the puppy, and probably won't take that long. And then you set the puppy down and you try to walk for a while. But maybe the clients live in the city and it's like chaos. And you don't want to walk the puppy, you don't feel good about it, and there's certainly no fence there, then the crate is probably your best option, or the baby gate, or trying to walk through the living room. So, yeah, I feel like a lot of this is playing the cards you're dealt, but it's find some way to let them interact a little bit and be around each other without a lot of excitement and with control. If you can achieve those two things, you're going to make progress, and just play with the tools at your disposal. And there's a lot of people where it's a single handler. We get those comments on YouTube all the time where someone's like, have litter mates or whatever, dogs that need to be separated or dogs that are fighting. How do I do this with one handler? And sometimes, although as a trainer, we're like, that's a bad idea. That's the card. You have to play the cards you're dealt. So that would suck to have to introduce an aggressive dog to a puppy by yourself, not as a dog trainer, without a second handler. But I'd be using the crate a lot for that.
So I feel like all those factors that you just touched on make so many more differences than the things that you have on your list here, right? Like playing the cards that you're dealt and finding the solution for the situation to me is far more important than the differences that we have here in dogs. Now, I agree that difference in dogs does make a difference for how you handle things. But again, to me, I would always be more cautious than what you guys have been. But all those other factors you just talked about, those are the things that would actually make the biggest differences for me.
So does that mean... Does that mean
before
that
you move on, Nelson? You're talking framework. Okay, go for it.
Yeah, framework. He's like, oh, you're on my side. Okay, go ahead. So does that mean that Covey's framework is superior then? Because we covered his framework and your framework all at the same time?
We haven't even gotten into most of the stuff I wanted to talk about.
So the reason I created it and the way I did, for the record, is what I didn't want to do is bounce around where we're like, you could do it this way, but if the dog's friendly, it'd be easier. But if he's like super aggressive, it'd be a lot harder. And oh man, if one was a puppy, you'd do it this way. We need some sort of framework to guide this because the way you introduce two 8-week-old puppies to each other is a lot different than two adult aggressive dogs, which we're going to get to. And there's going to be fireworks. Voss is going to be like, we need 6 handlers. We need 25 leashes.
2 leashes. 2 leashes on the harness, 2 leashes on the collar.
One of the big things I wanted to talk about is different types of introductions, because I feel like what we're talking about is really formal introductions as compared to dogs that aren't going to be around each other that much, that you just want to sort of get to know each other. I feel like there's different levels of introductions as well.
There are. I guess I was assuming this whole time this is someone who says, I want my dog to really to be off leash with this other dog.
So
that's kind
right.
of
So
the
full
framework
bore
that was-
introductions.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Both dogs,
Well,
same household.
I think we're going to get into more techniques and ideas as we get into harder dogs. So, but now we're taking a step towards the easier, because the next one, friendly older dog to friendly older dog. I
did want to say one last thing.
Oh,
one
yes,
last point
go for it.
about the former. And that point is that this is a very common situation, and a very common situation that we see good results with. So, though there would still be a lot of work to do with that more reactive dog, I can think of so many clients that have had a very reactive dog, potentially even aggressive dogs, where they have gotten into fights with other dogs, and we've still been able to introduce a puppy, and those dogs become best friends, because getting a dog to like one other dog is vastly different than getting one dog to like every other dog, or at least ignore every other dog. So,
can you do a thumbs up emoji in this program?
Yeah.
Because if so, I'd like to shoot one your way right now.
That was,
no way,
that
I
was
want
a
flames.
great
I want
point.
fire. Yeah, those are the emojis I want.
The way I explain that to a client is 99.99% certainty I can get a puppy introduced to your older dog. I don't care how aggressive
sure.
it is. The 99.9%. Can I get, if you said I've got this adult dog who's aggressive and I want him to be good with any new dog that comes up to him on leash, we're way below 99.99%. I can guarantee
Sure.
that. It so much depends on the dog, and it's going to be a much lower chance of the dog loving everyone. So agreed. Getting him to love one dog, because then he's going to love the puppy and then still be reactive to other dogs unless you fix
Exactly.
that.
Yeah,
Then the
definitely.
puppy's going to be like, if the puppy's a breed that enjoys that, is like, this is cool.
This is cool.
And your puppy's going to learn to be reactive like 10 times faster than your older dog did.
Definitely. That does happen.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so awesome older dog to awesome older dog.
Yeah.
Can I answer this one, but as Nelson?
Ooh.
Yes,
I'm going to give
I like this.
what I think Nelson's going to say.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm envisioning it's just Nelson with 2 dogs, and I'm going to say, just let them around each other. Why not? Just let them play with each other.
Like
Well-
no leash, no collars, no nothing, huh?
Yeah, they're both friendly. I know them both well, right? Because that's the criteria we were
That is the
using for
criteria.
friendly dogs before. So it's 2 dogs that you know very well, right? So why you're just going to let them play, right?
I mean, I don't know. That's a tough one. I guess it doesn't sound like bad advice to me, right? But at the same time, I would want it to go a little slow just for the initial contact. I mean,
but
situations change very quickly. You said it yourself. And so, I mean, there would still be some, though minimal, structure, right? If I know this dog and I like them, and I know this dog and I like them, and I know they like dogs, there would still be a tiny bit of structure, even as minimal as it would be, right? I would still walk in with, at the very least, one of them is on a leash, just so that I can walk around the yard, and like I'm envisioning it's my house. I would make one full revolution around the yard and then let them actually say hi.
I guess I don't get it. Why is there more structure here than puppy to friendly older dog?
Because a lot of dogs understand that puppies are puppies and puppies are annoying, where I just feel like there's more offense to older dog, right? Even though it's a very nice dog, that doesn't mean that they're going to take disrespectful behavior the same way they would from a puppy.
I'll give you that. I just then still don't see why you wouldn't have done it with puppy to friendly older dog, I guess.
I just told you why.
I'll give you a couple options here. I bring client dogs to my house fairly often to meet my dogs if they haven't met before. And when I do that, if I know the client dog, and I've been training with it and I know it to be friendly, I bring it to my house and I never let it surprise my dogs, because my dogs are both guard dogs. If they caught a strange dog in the yard, I don't think it would go super well. But I bring them and I call my dogs to the door while I have the other dog on leash, and they run up and see it. And I let everyone see each other. It's just like a glass, like storm door. Let them see each other through the door for a second. And then I have the other dog on leash, and I open the door and invite one of my dogs to come out. Let it come out, say hi to the other dog on leash for a second. I let the other one come out, say hi to the dog on leash for a second, and then I let that dog off leash, 10 seconds later, and the three of them play. So that's how I do it there. But to the point that Vlos would maybe make, I know my dogs, and they're good, and they're friendly with other dogs. There's nothing wrong with doing this on leash. So if you, the easiest way, would be to have them both on leash and go for a 5-minute walk together. And both owners, and you're just chatting, talking, making the dogs heel. You're away from the house, and then you let them smell each other, and it goes well. And if they're both friendly adult dogs, I would let them smell each other face to face. I would just, after healing for a few minutes, I would just tell them free and let them say hi, and just it'd be that easy. And then I'd let them say hi and then walk back to the house and kick them loose in the yard. I wouldn't get fancier on how I let them smell until we have dogs that we're truly worried about fighting.
Sure. I do want to point out that that's a good breakdown of the fact that you have two dogs to one, where in my scenario is one dog to one dog. You should absolutely not let both dogs probably run up at the same time. You don't want the one dog to feel entrapped.
Yeah, I'm glad you expanded. That was obviously my point, but I didn't really say that. But I don't want to terrify the dog where there's two big dogs that are in their face out of nowhere.
Right, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, let's move on. Make it a little harder. So our next one is friendly older dog to a standoffish older dog. And then after that, we have standoffish to standoffish before we get to our aggressive dogs again. So, these two would be fairly similar, how you'd introduce a friendly dog to a standoffish dog or two standoffish dogs to each other. It really depends on, what they're doing. Who wants to take this one? Let's let Vlos, you do it.
Yeah, let's let Vlos do this.
See, but again, I go back to, it's going to sound really similar to what I've already said. But, I'll go through it. So what I would do is start off with two handlers, one for each dog, right? And my goal would be to basically heel around each other until they're calm with each other. Now, we could go for a walk together, but again, that sort of goes to the whole playing cards you're dealt, whether you're going to work in the client's backyard and heel back and forth in the backyard, or if you're going to go out for a walk together. My personal opinion, if the one dog lives in the house, it's going to be better to leave. We talked about neutral territory to some extent. So to me, I would prefer to not be in a backyard. I would prefer to go for the walk, so that we can go around the neighborhood in a neutral territory where the dogs really don't know each other. Keep them within, let's say, 5 to 10 feet of each other, so that they can be sniffing the air, getting to know each other during that walk, seeing each other's mannerisms and all of those things before we go into introducing them. And I'm going to be looking at both dogs to see what their body language is, what they're acting like, all of those things before I make a decision to move forward with any further introduction.
I'm glad you said body language, because as we get to this one, then especially the next one, if you don't know body language, well, you're hosed. Like, you're going to have a fight on your hands if you don't understand dog body language. So if you're not a trainer, or you're a trainer that could use some brushing up on that, listen to the dog body language episode. We spent a lot of time talking about it. If you can't quickly identify what your dog is feeling in that moment, and when I say quickly, I mean like eighth of a second, like, right, instantly know what's going on, bad things are going to happen. So definitely brush up on that.
Yeah. So then once I feel good about how both dogs are doing, then I would move into something we haven't really talked about. And Covey, I think you sort of started to mention it, was how you let the dogs smell each other. Mm-hmm. So I would then go to butt sniffs, where basically one handler is going to approach from behind with their dog and let their dog go up to the other one's butt and sort of take a general sniff. And then we would turn away and walk away and then switch and have the other dog do the same thing. And the entire time really be watching the dog's body languages, making sure that they can approach each other and smell each other without either one tensing up or getting frustrated about what's happening in the situation.
So that was kind of my point a second ago, and you were right, is like this standoffish older dog to another adult dog is the first time that I look at the scenario and say we need to do a different on-leash intro. Face-to-face is too high of a risk. And this whole episode, we've been kind of like laughing most of this stuff off, right? But at this point, I mean, obviously not, puppy to aggressive older dog. We spent some time there talking about this could take a week or so. But this one, face-to-face intros are not a smart move. So I think without a doubt, we should dive in a little more just so everyone understands. Nelson, do you want to explain it, or do you want me to? What Vloss said, but just in other words, just in case it didn't make sense to a listener?
Go ahead.
So the idea is face-to-face intros are more likely to spark a fight. And a dog smelling the other dog's rear end is good, but how do you create that? You can't just say dog one, smell dog two's rear end, dog two, don't turn around and attack them. You have to somehow create that. So we would be heeling, preferably away from the home, and I would have gone for a walk already first, build up some trust, like Vloss said, let the dog smell the air and get to know each other. And then I would start walking really slowly, and I would have one dog at my side, and I would bring the other dog up from behind and just walk behind for as long as that takes until the dog in front's not spinning around to look at that dog. And then I would let the dog from behind kind of sneak up and smell the other dog's rear end as you're walking. And the person in front is responsible for keeping the other dog facing forward. We've got a video showing this exact process. So if you're listening to this and it doesn't quite make sense, watch the video. It's I think it's how to do intros with reactive dogs, it's called.
I think that's what it's called, yeah.
And in it, we explained if your dog is still like lunging at the other dog, you're not ready for this. You fix that overt reactivity first, and then this is how you actually do the intros. And then once one dog has smelled the other one's rear end a few times, it's gone well, then you would switch and let the other dog two become the dog in front, and let the other dog smell that one's rear end, and then you decide what next. Did that go well enough? Was everyone pretty cool about it? And then now you start letting them smell each other a little more face to face. That's when it starts to get more questionable, because if you have two good handlers, that first thing we're just talking about is like, letting the dog smell each other's butt. The odds of an attack and like actually hurting each other are about zero if you have good handlers in that scenario. But face to face, even with good handlers, it happens quick. You can have a problem when you get to that point.
Not to dive into like crazy detail on that, but I would always caution everybody to make sure that the dog that we're worried about, or the more reactive dog, is the dog that gets sniffed first. because you want to be able to gauge what the reaction is, see how they handle being touched, especially having a dog, come up to them from behind and fix all of that stuff before they are ready to sniff the in this case, the nicer dog.
Mm-hmm. And getting back to dog body language, the things I would worry about is the dog behind should be smelling and should be wanting to smell the other dog. If it's staring at the other dog as you get closer and it's not smelling, to any dog trainer, that'd be a big red flag. Like, what is happening right now? If this dog is just staring, it might be one of the small percentage that'll attack from behind. That's usually uncommon because if you're healing and you've already healed next to each other, we're assuming you've walked side by side for 10 minutes. If you've done that and the other dog's not being reactive, very few dogs will then get behind that other dog and decide, I'm just going to charge it into attack. That's insanely rare. But if you were behind that dog and it's not smelling, that would be a big red flag.
For sure.
Do we want to move to aggressive dog to aggressive dog? I mean, it's going to be similar to this. It's just going to maybe change a few things.
Might as well, yeah. But, I mean, it is very similar, right? I mean, it's a combination of this and puppy to aggressive dog. So
if I was a listener right now, what I would say is, okay, you've talked about how to heal them side by side. Got it. You've talked about how to have the one in front and let the one smell his butt and then switch and do that. Got it. And then you've said it's really hard to now do the face-to-face, and you didn't give us any guidance there. That's the hard part. How do we do that? So to me, I think that's where we have to talk about playing the cards you're dealt and figuring out how to do that, because that's the meat of this. You do the intro part, but then what next?
I think I would probably try and clarify what the situation is, right? So if I have an aggressive dog and I'm doing an aggressive boarding train or for whatever reason, two aggressive dogs of mine are going to be living under the same house, this is going to take a long time. And things that I would probably make sure I have under my belt, aside from the more structured kind of follow the leader style of intros, is I'd be making sure that these dogs can spend structured time together. And what that might mean is, if I have multiple handlers, that's fantastic. This is certainly a time where I would welcome it. But I would be training both dogs in a similar area together, right? And they don't need to even actually pay attention to each other. They just need to be in a common area. Or I might put one dog on place while I train the other one and then switch them out. This one goes to this bed and now I start training this one. I would be spending a ton of very structured time together just to desensitize them a little bit, right? I mean, there is a huge value. It takes forever, so it's really tough to do in house calls. But for a board and train, no question. There's a huge value to just dogs existing together without actually having the social pressure of having to go nose to nose until I feel pretty confident about that. But you pair structured time together with the follow the leader style of intro, and you're going to have a pretty good idea of what that body language actually will look like when it comes to face, and things that I would be looking for is not indifference necessarily, but I definitely don't want them to have that furrowed brow or really hard stare at each other or anything like that. I would want to see loose body language, where the tail is not completely straight up and stiff or anything like that. I would want to see very relaxed from the whole body, right? Not just what does their face look like, but I'd want to see some really, really confidence-inspiring relaxation coming from these dogs before letting them go nose to nose or face to face, especially if I don't if it's me and another trainer. We might, say, well, this looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and give it a shot. If it's me and a client, until I am of the utmost confidence, I don't even know if I would let it go, and try and actually get these dogs to go face to face and play yet.
Well, to me, I think that takes us back to a big point that Covey made during Puppy to Aggressive Dog of it's going to take time, right?
Yeah.
And take your time. Don't rush this, right? Just take your time getting the dogs around each other. When you're going from like sniffing each other's butt to getting to face, right? You really want to make sure you're paying attention to the dog's body language, like you said, making sure there's not staring, making sure there's not stiffness. All of those factors are important before you really let the dogs go up to each other. And what I would usually do is after doing like the butt sniff exercise, I would have the two people stand like 5 feet away from each other, just holding the leash, and the whole time be looking at both dogs and saying, what are they doing, right? Are they paying attention to each other? Are their eyes locked on each other? Are they sort of looking around at other things? All of this is going to determine what we do next and where we go from there. We might take a step back if the dogs are staring at each other and mad, and we might go to heeling again and just walk around for a while again and then go back to butt sniffs before we ever get back to face. So to me, I think biggest thing is take your time, read dog body language, and then continue forward once you're seeing progress.
So let's talk face to face. We keep beating around the bush here, and the listeners want to know, and I'm going to drop a nugget of wisdom here, but not until you rate this show. So look at your phone. There's a tab that says About on your Spotify app. I have no idea what it looks like on Apple. And you click that. It'll say ratings. There's a number of stars. You're going to want to hit 5. That's the number you want to hit. That means you like our show. And even if you don't like it, still hit 5. So I'll give you some time here.
People like arguing, and I think this is the most arguing we've ever had on a show, so it's a good one to have people rate us for.
All right, so you gave us 5 stars. Thank you very much. I see those numbers climbing. How do you do the face-to-face? How do you finally get to that point? What I would tell a client, if you have aggressive dogs, is a muzzle. You're crazy not to muzzle train these dogs. I think it'd be nuts not to. And the reason for that is the muzzle allows you to be so much gentler with the dogs. It's not just about preventing, like you might say, I don't think they'd really hurt each other. Well, I would say if you let these two dogs go to smell each other and one does something that you don't like, even if you're good at dog body language and you know it, and you see the dog tenses up and you're like, uh-oh, I think this is something, and the dog goes to move, what are you going to do? I'm assuming you yank back on the leash and pull them away. Mm-hmm. Well, what if you jumped the gun? What if your dog was about to like play bow? He was about to dive into a play bow and you yanked him back, and then now he's nervous, and now what? Now how do you go back and let him say hi? And you don't even know if he was going to do a play bow or if he was going to attack the other dog. And what the muzzle allows you to do is give just another split second to evaluate. Because even if you're a really good trainer that really knows dog body language, then if that's the case, you know how fast this all happens. You have such a moment within a moment to identify what that dog's going to do, and you have to be right every single time or a dog's going to get its face ripped up. To me, that's a crazy risk to take, because you might be right 9 out of 10, but what's going to happen is you're going to have to overcorrect a lot of times that shouldn't have been. So I would muzzle train them so you do all this other stuff that we've talked about, and now you can let them go face to face. And so I would do the butt sniffs, all of that, acclimate them to muzzles, and then now you could let them slowly go face to face. And if you're watching them and you're like, I don't know, I'm getting tense, I think they might be getting tense, tell them heel. Both handlers heel, and you walk off. And then you come back to it. And you let them say hi again and kind of look at each other. And if you all of a sudden you feel a little tension building, you tell them heel. And if you were correct and tension was building, there's a good chance they're going to lunge as soon as you say heel and walk them off. And you'll say, okay, I was right. I caught that one. And if you tell them heel and they're like, hey, what's going on? Most likely there wasn't tension building. That was probably play about to happen. And I don't think we need to identify everything that happens in dog body language in this episode, because we already have one on that. But remember that everything they do in fights, they do in play. So when they're about to attack each other, they're very common to freeze and stare and then attack. But it's also very common for two dogs that are buddies to freeze and stare and then play attack and jump on each other and growl and wrestle. So you've got to know dog body language and also know your dog. And if your dog is a rough, loud player, that's probably kind of normal. If your dog is a gentle player and you've never seen him freeze and then charge another dog and he's freezing, that's almost certainly going to be an issue that you should address. So muzzle, 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 muzzle.
And I think the terminology of, it's going to be gentler on your dog is, so perfect, right? Because especially if you don't have muzzles on these dogs and you start to feel tension build, there's one of two ways to kind of break that off so that hopefully nothing crazy happens. And one is call them back to you. But if your dogs aren't good enough to be able to do that, especially face to face with another dog, you cannot slowly pull your dog with leash pressure away from another dog, because that tension going backwards might get them to actually lunge and start the fight. They're going to use that tension as the launching point of whatever fight it was, right? So you could have just escalated the situation. And so the reason that it's going to be gentler on the dog is such good phrasing is because the other option is you're going to have to be able to, hey, that dog is starting to get tense. I now have to pull back hard enough and fast enough that I can create distance where they cannot close it and actually reach each other. And so, especially if you jump the gun and you just don't have the same amount of time, and it's better to be safe than it is to be sorry, you're going to be pulling your dog back and pretty abruptly, way more often, especially, because there's a good chance that it potentially could have been play, or if nothing else, at least I would have had the time to at least try calling the dog back to me before pulling them back.
I heard that, Nelly. So a question we had on Spotify was about doing dog intros, and one thing they had asked, I was just pulling it up real quick so I could remember, was what do you do different if this is a dog, like a dog pal dog park intro versus intro at the home? Like a new dog. And the big thing I would say is the resources. Other than that, it's all going to be pretty similar, but at home you have to make sure your dog is not going to guard you when it's on your lap or on your feet. Guard his dog bed, guard his bones, guard his toys, guard his cage. Who knows? It depends whatever he likes. And you should probably know what your dog really likes. And that's the stuff he's likely to guard. If your dog doesn't ever go in his cage and doesn't like it, probably not going to guard it. But if that's his safe zone and he has a dog bed in there and likes it, then there's a much higher likelihood. So that's the stuff I'd worry about. The resources is long-winded. My long-winded answer is basically just worry about resources if it's a new pet.
So I think that was a great question. I have another scenario that I don't know if it's going to be any different for you guys, but I just want to ask anyways. So two dogs that have lived in the same house and used to fight and now have been separated for some period of time. Is reintroducing them the same as introducing two aggressive dogs that haven't met each other?
I think so. I think a lot of it would be very, very similar, though I might go incredibly much slower because there's very, very likely going to be bad blood between these dogs. So I would be 10 times more cautious about face-to-face, 10 times more cautious about any type of resource guarding. Again, a common question that I will ask people when we get to a house call and one dog in the house is attacking another dog in the house is, what is that second dog doing? Because at some point they are going to learn I need to attack first instead of just constantly, getting my butt handed to me. I need to be able to throw down, and you get to a very, very difficult place when both dogs want to fight equally as much, especially having been separated, and that really, it doesn't help. It's safer, but it doesn't help the situation, right? So it's not like, well, they've cooled off for 2 weeks, go ahead and put them back together, they're going to be completely normal. Where if they started fighting and then you separated them, there's a good chance that they've just kind of ingrained a grudge.
Yeah, I think you touched on what I think the biggest difference is, and it's at the start I'm going to be trying to figure out what caused those fights, and is there stuff that we have to do to address that before we worry about the reintroduction? And then that also might influence how we do the reintroduction and precautions that we take because of it.
So, and that to me is the advantage of this scenario, because there is the plus that if you ask the right questions and the client was there when they fought, you at least know what the trigger is. So now you know resources is a problem or whatever, or it's excitement. They're cool and then they're chasing a squirrel and they both get worked up and attack each other. So at least if we ask the right questions and the client was there when the fight happened, we can probably figure out why they fought and create a more targeted training plan. So there's a little bit of silver lining there at least.
For sure.
Versus telling the client, could be distrust, could be excitement, could be resources. I don't know. They might fight over any of those things, and then you don't know where to put your energy.
Let's throw a stake and find out.
But it is nice because you guys know how it is. Most dogs that we're working with that have been fighting each other, most don't fight all the time. Most fight over resources or excitement when it's two dogs in the house. We're getting rid of distrust here because there's generally not that because they know each other. But excitement, doorbell rings, now they fight. Squirrel in the yard, now they fight, or a resource. Those are by far the most common, and we see it a lot, and at least we know we can set that up and not worry as much about the other stuff because there's a good chance you put them in the backyard and they're fine together as long as they don't have any resources back there.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
And how many clients do we all have that you do the house call and you're working on whatever, and they're like, oh, they're fine in the yard if I'm not there. And like the majority of the time, that's true, right? And they're like, as we're finishing the lesson, I'll just put them in the backyard. I'll let them loose. They're fine back there. And you're like, I kind of want to run. I kind of just want to run. If you're going to let them loose in the yard right now, I don't want to be here for that. But there's a lot of dogs that don't fight in that scenario.
Until they do.
I was wondering what you guys were going to say. Until they do. Yeah. Well, what do you feel like we didn't cover? We got through the big picture stuff I wanted to, so that people could have a framework to kind of walk through and think about different scenarios. Floss, what are you unhappy about?
I think we've finally done it. No, I think we've finally done it. We got through everything that I would have wanted to talk about, and your list as well. So to Nelson's point, maybe you did it better.
I think we should both upload images of our framework for the audience to see, and people can vote.
Can we do a poll?
I can just show mine.
A poll. That'd be interesting.
Look at this. Okay. That's mine.
That's his.
Nice.
Nice.
I mean, this
short,
was ours.
Concise.
Yeah, people think about something being concise. That's hard to make it concise. That's 8 hours of work, maybe 10.
So the crazy thing is, if we
don't check the history of the document, please.
If we just went off of looks, I would actually pick yours too, 100%, because I didn't do it in a doc because I know you guys aren't going to look at it, right? So I just wrote it for myself real quick, so I knew that we had stuff to talk about.
Here's all the excuses.
I have a feeling Vloss's looks like, when someone becomes obsessed with something and they start drawing those charts and the lines between it and making connections like a conspiracy. I think that's what he's got.
No, it's nothing crazy. It's just some quick notes.
Well, if you have questions from this episode, anyone listening, let us know. We mentioned, a few times the dog body language video. I think these go hand in hand. I would listen to them both together if this is something you want to brush up on. But if you have questions and if you feel like we missed something, tell us. If there was a scenario where you're like, I can't believe you never got to this one, let us know, and we'll do it. We'll cover it.
Definitely.
Well, thank you for giving us 5 stars today, everybody. Appreciate that.
And a thumbs up on YouTube.
Oh, yeah, if we post it on YouTube. I would actually like to hear comments from people on that as well. We don't post most of our episodes on YouTube, just on Spotify and Apple and different podcast places. And I'm curious what people think about that, how many people would like to see them on YouTube.
Everybody comment down that it should absolutely live on YouTube.
I agree with Nelson.
But you know why we don't, right? YouTube people
Because you're
love our
crazy.
YouTube videos and don't care much about the podcast. And we get these podcasts do great on Spotify and Apple. They get a lot of views, and we put them on YouTube, and the views are like, meh.
So let's make a channel just for the podcast.
It's not a bad idea.
And then we can do behind the scenes videos. That would be funny.
Okay, I could actually get behind that.
Nice.
Balance training YouTube channel.
There you go.
Okay, someone else has to manage it, though. I don't want anything to do with it. I just want to
Done.
film them. All right. Thanks for watching, everybody.
Thanks,
I'll see ya.
everyone.